Christmas in Heaven by Anthony DeStefano. Illustrated by Bernadette Karstensen. Read by the author. How do they celebrate Christmas in heaven? The little boy asked, who was no more than 7. His grandma had gone to be with the Lord. He wanted to know if she would be bored, up in the clouds so high in the sky, while everyone here just wanted to cry. His grandfather lifted the boy on his knee. He said, "Close your eyes and listen to me." The reason we celebrate Christmas on earth is that it's the day of our dear Savior's birth. In heaven, they're having a giant affair. All of the saints and the angels are there. St. Gabriel's starting the big celebration by blowing his horn in sweet adoration. St. Peter is standing outside heaven's gate, making sure none of the guests have to wait. Inside, St. Martha's been cleaning for hours, while little Therese is handing out flowers. St. Lucy is putting the lights on the tree, making it merry and bright as can be. St. Joseph, who once saved his family from danger, is under the Christmas tree building a manger. St. Nick is unloading the toys from his sleigh for all heaven's children on this happy day. "I can't find a present," the jolly man shouts. St. Anthony rushes to help the saint out. St. Martha stops cleaning and now starts to cook, while Thomas Aquinas sits reading a book. St. Lawrence is turning the roast on a fire, while Joan of Arc helps him to make the flames higher. St. Valentine has chocolate hearts on a tray. St. Martin de Porres helps give them away. Cecilia and Gregory sing a duet. They're joined by 2 angels to make a quartet. St. Luke is there painting the choir as it sings. St. Mark flies above on a lion with wings. St. Martha starts dusting and sweeping all over. St. Patrick awards her an emerald leaf clover. And there on the table's a huge birthday cake that's taken St. Honoré so long to bake. St. Matthew's been up counting candles all night. There's over 2,000 St. John has to light. All of a sudden, the door opens wide. In walks St. Francis, and there by his side are kittens and puppies and donkeys and sheep. St. Martha is following, trying to sweep. "It's hopeless," she says. "There's too much to do." St. Jude helps her finish. A miracle come true. "Oh, wow," said the boy when Grandpa was done. "Heaven's exciting and seems like such fun." "But wait," the boy asked, attempting to see. "Where is my grandma? Where can she be?" "Look over there," his grandfather said. The boy saw a girl who was sleeping in bed. "But that's not my grandma. My grandma is old. That lady is young. Her hair is all gold." His grandfather answered, "You don't understand. No one is old in this glorious land. The people in heaven are all young once more. They're even more lovely than they were before. Just look at your grandma. Look at my wife, the most beautiful person I've known in my life." "But wait, it's the Lord, whose birthday's today. He's walking toward Grandma. The saints all make way." The Lord looks at Grandma. His face is aglow. He speaks the same words that he spoke long ago. "Maiden, I tell you, it's time to arise. And look, Grandma hears him and opens her eyes. The Lord takes her hand and leads her to where St. Michael is waiting to hold out her chair. She sits down right next to Our Lady the Queen, looking more joyful than I've ever seen. And now all the angels and saints start to sing, "Happy birthday to Jesus! Happy birthday, our King!" And now Grandma spots us. She's waving, you see? She's blowing some kisses to you and to me. Just then, the boy felt a warm breeze on his cheek. He opened his eyes, excited to speak. "Grandma just kissed me. I felt it. It's true." She saw us and smiled and waved at us too. The grandfather gave the young boy an embrace. He put him down gently and kissed the boy's face. "I told you," he whispered, "there's no need to fear. Don't be unhappy and don't shed a tear. It's okay that Grandma is no longer here. She's spending her Christmas in heaven this year." The Grumpy Old Ox, written by Anthony DeStefano, illustrated by Richard Cowdrey. There once was an ox, grumpy and old, blind as a bat, selfish and cold. Prideful and lame, with tired old bones, he lived in a stable, depressed and alone. Without any family and no friends in sight, he stayed by himself from morning till night. His master, like him, was stubborn and vain. He owned a small inn where visitors came. He gave the ox orders, the ox disobeyed. Defiant and willful, he wasn't afraid. The man took a broom and with a loud smack, he gave the old ox a whack on his back. "You lazy and sightless and smelly old brute," the innkeeper shouted and kicked with his boot. The ox simply sneered and grumbled with pride. He limped to the stable and lay down inside. The stable was dark, but he didn't mind. He stayed there alone, just bitter and blind. Then, one black night, a door opened wide. A man and a woman were standing outside. The owner was with them. He said with a grin, "You'll have to stay here, no room at my inn." The ox strained his eyes, attempting to see. He barely detected the forms of all three. The lady was pregnant and heavy with child. The man held her hand and tenderly smiled. He put a small blanket on top of the dirt. The woman lay down, about to give birth. The innkeeper left them all cold and alone, without any food and so far from home. But something odd happened that memorable night, something that gave the ox quite a fright. A shutter flew open, and in flooded light. A star in the heavens was dazzlingly bright. It made the small stable feel pleasant and warm. In this simple setting, the child was born. Strange as it seems, the ox became sad because the young family was treated so bad. "I'm all by myself," the grumpy ox sighed. "The reason is that I'm so full of pride. But this little babe, so humble and poor, is guiltless and precious and perfect and pure." Just at that moment, he had an idea. He struggled to stand and limped over near the manger he ate from, all filled up with straw, and pulled it across the cold stable floor. He looked at the woman. In ox talk he said, "Take my straw manger for your baby's bed." He limped to the pail from which he drank water. He picked up the handle and carried it toward her. He put the pail down and said with a bow, "Wash him with this. I'm not thirsty right now." The lady just smiled and patted his head. She understood somehow the things that he said. She bathed her small baby and dressed him in white. He slept in the manger throughout the cold night. Soon shepherds came in, along with their sheep. They knelt by the crib and watched the babe sleep. A donkey and camel came through the door. They walked very slowly and knelt on the floor. 3 figures followed. Each wore a crown, each bearing gifts, each kneeling down. What can be happening? Who can this be? The grumpy ox squinted. I wish I could see. He strained with his eyes and thought for a while, then looked at the child and started to smile. This baby is special, sent down from above. Yes, that's why this stable is so filled with love. That's why these people are worshiping him. He must be from God. He must be a king. The rest of the night, he knelt on the earth, next to the feet of the girl who gave birth. The family soon left to find a new home. With everyone gone, the ox was alone. He thought of the babe, so loved and adored, while he, the old ox, was shunned and ignored. I'll try to be different, the grumpy ox swore. I won't be so prideful or mean anymore. He walked to the manger. His hunger was great. He stuck his head in and rapidly ate. Then he felt thirsty and looked over where the babe had been bathed in the bucket with care. He drank from the pail until he was done, and soon fell asleep outside in the sun. He slept and he slept and he slept through the night. He rose with the dawn and the soft golden light. But when he awoke and opened his eyes, the ox was amazed by a wondrous surprise. He looked all around, and what did he find? He couldn't believe he no longer was blind. The hillside, the village, the stable, the tree, all that he gazed at was plain as could be. He rubbed both his eyes, then rubbed them again. Now he saw donkeys and camels and men. All that was blurry was now crystal clear. Even the mountains appeared very near. He got to his feet and walked through the field. His leg was all better. His limp had been healed. He ran to the stable and danced through the door. He didn't feel grumpy or old anymore. The ox was so grateful he started to sing. It must be a gift from the king. The baby from heaven, it just has to be. I drank from the water and now I feel free. I ate from the manger and now I can see. He started to cry and shouted with glee. I can see, at last I can see.
The Beggar and the Bluebird by Anthony DeStefano. Illustrated by Richard Cowdrey. Read by the author. Once upon a time, there was a bluebird who lived in the city. Like most birds, he flew south every winter to avoid the freezing weather. But one year, he had so much fun soaring above the big buildings and swooping down through the streets that he lost track of time and left much later in the season than he should have. It was already Christmas Eve, and the bluebird knew the first winter snowstorm was about to blow through. Just before the bird departed, though, he flew down into the park to eat some birdseed that was thrown by a poor beggar. The beggar was sitting on a bench as he tossed the seeds onto a dirt pathway. He had crutches and seemed like a nice man, so the bluebird started talking to him. He told him that he was flying south for the winter so he could enjoy the warm sunshine and sing all day long. The beggar looked at him and smiled. Then he asked the bluebird to do him a small favor. "Little bird," he said, "there's a homeless man I know on the other side of the city. He hasn't eaten for days and is very hungry. I have a loaf of bread that was given to me by a kind person this morning. I can't walk very well with these crutches. Will you please deliver the bread to him so he has something to eat?" "But I can't," the bluebird responded. "I have to fly south for the winter. It's already getting cold, and I can't survive the first frost." But the beggar persisted. "Please do me this favor. The old man is starving and needs help. If you don't give him this food, he may get very sick." So the bluebird agreed. He flew off with the bread to the other side of the city and thought, "I hope this won't take too long." When he finally found the homeless man, he dropped the loaf of bread into his lap. "It's a miracle," the man cried out as he began to hungrily eat the bread that had fallen from the sky. When the bluebird returned to the beggar, he told him how happy the old man was. He was about to set off for the south when the beggar asked him another question. "Little bird," he said, "there's a young widow I know who lives in a small, shabby house nearby. She has 2 children and she's very poor. I have a few dollars that were just given to me. Can you bring them to this woman? She needs the money more than I do." "Oh, but I can't," the bluebird replied. "It's getting very cold now, and the sky is looking frosty. I simply must leave for the south." But once again, the beggar told the bluebird how much the young woman needed help, and once again, the bluebird agreed. So off he flew to the house where the widow lived and tapped on her door with his wings. When the woman opened the door, the bird dropped the money into her hands and flew away. The poor lady couldn't believe it. "This must be a gift from heaven," she cried. "Now I can buy a Christmas present for my children." The bluebird flew back to the beggar and told him he had given the widow the money. "But now I really have to go," he said. "I simply must fly south." He could feel the frost beginning to form in his wings and could see a storm was moving into the city. Once again, though, the beggar pleaded with him to do one final favor. "I know a sick boy in a hospital a few blocks away," he told the bird, "and he has just about given up hope. He thinks everyone has abandoned him." The beggar pulled a small gold cross from his pocket. "This was given to me long ago," he said. "If you bring it to the boy, it might make him understand that he's not alone, that God loves him." But this time the bluebird insisted that he could not make the delivery. "Don't you see? It's already starting to snow," he cried. "And if I don't leave this second, I'm going to get caught in the storm and freeze." "But this won't take long," the beggar assured him, "and it will bring so much comfort to the little boy. Please help him." The bluebird was frightened, but he was sorry for the child. No one should feel alone, especially at Christmas, he thought, and maybe I could fly extra fast. So flapping his wings as swiftly as he could, the bluebird flew like a shot through the city. When he arrived at the hospital, He could see the boy sitting on his bed, alone and sad. He tapped on the window with his beak. The boy looked over curiously. The winter storm had begun, and the bird was already covered in snow. The boy opened the window, and the bird carefully placed the cross in his hand. The boy didn't understand, but he realized that the bird was giving him something very special. As the bird flew off the ledge, the boy smiled at him, amazed at the gift he had received. By now, the bluebird was very tired. He struggled to fly back to the beggar through the driving snow, which had now become a blizzard. But he was so weak he could barely keep his eyes open. When he finally landed on the ground next to the beggar, he closed his wings tightly around his little body in an attempt to keep out the icy wind. But it didn't do any good. He was freezing and exhausted. He knew now that he would never see the South. The beggar looked at him with love. "Are you sorry that you stayed to help those poor people?" he asked. The bluebird thought for a second. "No," he answered, shivering. "I'm glad I was able to make them happy at Christmas. But now I just have to go to sleep." Then the bird closed his eyes and lay flat and still on the cold ground. The beggar looked down at him and said, "Little bird, you were willing to sacrifice yourself in order to give others the gift of hope. But you will not die." The beggar stood up and dropped his crutches. His old, tattered coat slipped to the ground. Then, one by one, the pieces of dark, dirty clothing began to fall from his body. He started to grow larger, and suddenly 2 huge white wings sprouted from his back, and a dazzling white light began to shine round his face. The beggar was not a beggar at all, but an angel. The angel picked up the bluebird, cupping him softly in his hands. He looked at him and said, "You will never die, but will sing your song forever." Then he spread his wings and leaped into the air, flying upward through the snow. Soon they were high above the clouds. The sun was shining brightly, and the angel flew toward it. The bluebird, who had been sleeping, felt the light from the sun on his face and woke up. He was amazed to see how beautiful the sunlit sky looked. "It's so warm," he whispered. "I must be in the South." Then the angel released him, and the bluebird flew into the sunshine, singing and happily flapping his wings. Joseph's Donkey by Anthony DeStefano. Illustrated by Juliana Kolosova. Read by the author. Joseph was a carpenter who lived in Galilee, in a town called Nazareth, a short way from the sea. Honest, kind, and always fair, he hardly said a word. Work and prayer and silence were the things that he preferred. But Joseph's cart was filled with wood, just loaded to the brim. What he needed was a donkey, big and strong like him. So to the market Joseph went. He looked around and saw a dozen noisy donkeys shout, "Hee-haw, hee-haw, hee-haw." But in the corner by himself, a quiet donkey stood, looking brave and strong and silent, like a donkey should. Joseph saw his noble face and loved him at first sight. He bought the donkey on the spot and rode him home that night. The donkey didn't disappoint. He did what he was told. He worked as much as Joseph, and his heart was good as gold. He knew that donkeys only live for 30 years or less. He didn't want to waste his time in idle laziness. And so he worked for several months, the best months of his life. But nothing matched the joy he felt when he met Joseph's wife. Mary was a perfect girl, graceful, pure, and sweet. When Joseph's donkey saw her smile, he knelt before her feet. Joseph took him to the side and said to him that day, "You must protect my wife should any danger come her way." The donkey nodded thoughtfully and made a silent vow. "Although I'm very meek and shy, I'll do my best somehow." Soon after this, the donkey learned the lady he adored was pregnant with a baby boy, Jesus Christ the Lord. Then from Rome came urgent news. A census was proclaimed. People had to travel to the towns from which they came. To Bethlehem the donkey went, with Mary on his back. Joseph walked in front of them to keep them all on track. They found a humble stable there, clean and dry and warm. With starlight shining down on them, the Son of God was born. But not far off, there lived a king whose jealous heart was filled with so much hatred for the babe, he tried to have him killed. The frightened family fled at once to find a place to hide. They stayed in Egypt several years until the bad king died. Arriving home at Nazareth, the four was safe at last. Joseph went to work again, and several more years passed. The donkey worked beside him too, hauling stones and wood, and bearing Jesus on his back throughout his childhood. Jesus loved the donkey so, he rode him every day to places he could be alone and close his eyes and pray. The donkey watched the child there, so holy and devout. He knew he had to be from God. Of that there was no doubt. When the boy was 12 years old, the family packed their things. They journeyed to Jerusalem, the ancient land of kings. Jesus rode upon his friend, and when no one could hear, he leaned down low and whispered this into the donkey's ear. "A different donkey years from now will take me here again, and I will suffer greatly then, but rise to life. Amen." This secret made the donkey sad, and tears rolled down his cheek. He didn't show the child, though, or even try to speak. They worshipped at the Temple Mount, a wondrous sight to see. Then they started traveling back with all their family. Jesus was among the crowd, or so they thought at first. But he was nowhere to be found, and Joseph feared the worst. Returning to Jerusalem in panic and despair, they searched 3 days but couldn't find the child anywhere. Just then the donkey's eyes grew wide, as if he'd seen a light. "I know the place to look," he thought. "I'm sure I must be right." Recalling all the times he watched the boy alone at prayer, he raced up to the Temple Mount and finally found him there. The boy was sitting in a group. The sun shone on his head. The elders of the temple were amazed by what he said. Although the donkey never spoke and hardly made a sound, he had to somehow tell his master Jesus had been found. Hee haw, hee haw, hee haw, he cried, till Joseph heard at last. He and Mary soon arrived, before too long had passed. Where have you been? His parents asked, relieved but still upset. He answered, in my Father's house, or don't you know me yet? The four were glad to get back home, the donkey most of all. Days and months and years went by. The little boy grew tall. As Jesus grew, the donkey aged. He passed his 30th year. He lost his sight, his legs got lame. The end seemed drawing near. He tried to limp across the field where he had always run. He fell 3 times and realized then his walking days were done. He carried Jesus many years when Jesus was a child. Now Jesus carried him back home so he could rest a while. Jesus sighed and said to him, I know it's getting dark. You've finished your great mission, and on mine I'll soon embark. Then Mary rubbed the donkey's neck and kissed him on his head. She gave him something cold to drink and offered him some bread. Joseph sat by his old friend and whispered lovingly, I've been your master many years, but now I set you free. When you arrive at heaven's gate, please wait a while for me. I'm growing very old myself, and won't be long, you'll see. Then Jesus looked at him and said, my arms and hands take hold. O good and faithful servant, fear not the dark or cold. For in my Father's kingdom are fields of green and gold, with miles and miles to run in, and happiness untold. Just close your eyes now gently. Be faithful and be bold. Open them again now, and then, my friend, behold.
Hello friend, I'm Pat Boone. I'm a granddaddy now, and one of the things I most enjoy is reading a good book to my grandkids. It's a special experience for them and for granddaddy as well. Now I'd like to do something special, read something to you that I think you're going to enjoy. It's a wonderful Christmas book for kids. It's called Little Star, written by a longtime friend of mine named Anthony DeStefano, who's written some other best-selling books for kids. This one I think is destined to become a classic. Little Star. I think you're going to enjoy it as much as I do. This is the story of the little star. Dad, which one is the Christmas star? The boy asked, straining his eyes as he looked out at the clear, dark sky. The father, smiling, looked down at his son. Don't hurt your eyes looking for him. You won't find him. He's not up there anymore. Where is he? Where did he go? You mean I never told you the story of the Christmas star before? No, Dad, never. The boy shook his head. Please tell me. Well, a long time ago, in the farthest corner of the universe, there was a tiny star. In fact, he was the smallest star in the heavens. His name was Little Star. Little Star was sad and lonely. The other stars didn't make fun of him. They simply ignored him because he was so tiny. But what can be worse for a star than to be ignored? After all, stars do little more than decorate the sky. They help pass the long evenings by twinkle talk. And there was a lot of twinkling going on. The other stars were all talking about a rumor they had heard for ages, a rumor that a king would soon be born on a faraway planet called Earth. It was known that the king had a special message that would change the whole world forever. As the great day approached, excitement among the stars began to build. A special reward was to be given to the star who could shine the brightest on the night the baby king was born. In preparation, the stars were being cleaned and dusted by long-tailed comets. They made them twinkle and sparkle and give off a much stronger light, all except Little Star, who was being ignored again, despite his tears. Little Star was so sad that his points drooped. How could an undusted star have any chance of winning the reward? Finally, on the coldest night of the year, one of the stars yelled, "It's happening! It's happening! The king is going to be born!" Far below, in the small village of Bethlehem, Little Star could see two people, a woman sitting on a donkey and a man walking beside her. He watched as they searched for somewhere to rest. It was bitter cold, and Little Star felt sorry for them. Wherever they went, no one seemed to want them. People can be cruel too, he thought. At last, the man and woman located a place to stay. It was a shabby stable, but at least it gave them protection against the icy winds. This is a strange way for a king to be born, thought Little Star. Then, with only the silent stars as witnesses, the child was born. The mother wrapped the baby in a blanket and carefully placed him in a straw-filled manger. The baby's name was Jesus. "He can't be a king," one of the stars said. "Kings aren't born poor. We've been fooled." Feeling disappointed, many of the other stars agreed. But Little Star kept looking down at the baby. Suddenly, a thought came to him. "I think I understand," Little Star cried out. "The baby Jesus is a king. He's just little." Little Star knew that Jesus could have chosen to be born in a palace surrounded by riches, but instead, he had humbled himself to be born in a stable. He didn't want to be rich and important. He wanted to be like the poorest of the poor. Jesus wanted to be born little to show all the people of the world that he loved them, no matter how small or poor they were. Of all the stars in the heavens, Little Star was the only one to understand the king's message. His message was love. Little Star's heart was bursting with joy. He wanted so badly to touch the child. Trying as hard as he could, he used all his strength and might to reach out with his light toward the earth. Burning brighter and brighter, he extended his rays down to the village of Bethlehem, into the cold stable, warming and lighting it with his love. The other stars were amazed. They had never seen Little Star so big and bright, but they were scared that he was burning too brightly for such a small star. "Stop," they all yelled. "Stop, or you'll burn yourself out." Little Star could not hear their warnings. He was only aware of the child in the cold stable. All through the long, cold night, Little Star burned as brightly as he could so the baby Jesus could be warm. When dawn came, the star that no one had ever noticed was tiny and gray. "Little Star is gone," the other stars cried. "He burned himself out." "Well, son," said the father, "that's the story of the Christmas star." "But he's gone," the boy felt very sad. No, he's not. He's not gone at all." The father patted his son's hand to reassure him. "You see, Little Star did a wonderful thing that night in Bethlehem. He gave his life so that baby Jesus could be warm. And God gave him a great reward in return. Little star will be remembered forever and ever. You mean little star isn't gone, the boy asked. No, he's alive, the father said. Every Christmas when we celebrate Jesus' birthday, people all over the world place a star on top of their Christmas tree to remember him. The boy looked up at the star on top of the Christmas tree and smiled.